attacker-sided map at the minute here at SI. They want to start on the attacking side of things.
Is this the moment that we see DarkZero have a really good bank game?
Is it? No. I want to stop you right now for a second, Tim.
Okay.
You're not allowed to flame the hold for basement that's inside of open area.
What about if they try it twice and it fails twice again, so it's 4 times in one day? Because I think that's fair for me to say. I don't think that hold works at that point.
Maybe.
Flores not going to be our 2 bans coming in. I think DarkZero banned knock earlier on bank. As we said, not an operator necessarily picked up by the opposing team, but one for DarkZero's comfort.
Because they just get so rattled by it. I think they rely quite heavily on bulletproofs. We've seen Maestro, Evil Eyes. We've seen everything coming out to give them information. And Nook, obviously the perfect counter to that style of play. The Flores ban definitely coming in against Canadian, who on most of the map earlier on, when they played it against Na'Vi, we saw a lot of Ying. We saw a lot of Flores. Canadian alternating between those 2 operators. If you want to play behind utility, play behind shields, for example, just getting it off the board is always going to be a sensible and sane plan. Last ban coming in is going to be Mira. We say this all the time, Tim, but those 2 defender bans are part of the go-to rotation that we're seeing in the bans these days. Wamai also up there as well. On the attacking side, though, the one to consider is that we do not have a Thatcher ban. So you're likely going to see that being brought out a lot. Maybe the other side leans into Kaid here and there, but don't expect it to become a commonplace thing. We're going to start out in the least played site. I think we went over the numbers earlier on, Tim. Was it like 168 rounds of bank have been played and only 8? Huh?
There was 8 that had been played here.
I'm saying in general.
That's 10 now.
Yeah.
Because they played it twice.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
No problem.
You've really got me covered. It was about 168 rounds in total, Tim, and 10 rounds of those have been played in Tellers and Archives. It is the least popular site by some margin to 3 or 4 times. It's the next site then being played. Can't quite remember which one that was. We were looking at the stats for Tellers and Archives specifically. But as we kick things off on here, Tim, we have got that Kaid being brought along. Hyper doing the Lord's work and bringing along the Thatcher just in case they needed to undo any roadblocks that might get in their way. Namely the Kaid, the Mute Jammer's also going to have a part in that. But you can't ignore, too, the fact that it's going to be able to wipe out a good number of magnets in a given area. And that's when the nades can start flying. The utility can come singing in and they can look for their execute.
The thing I would say about this site choice, and I'm going to talk slowly so I can check my notes as I'm saying it, is I seem to recall there was 2 sites, that 2 rounds that were won by DarkZero on the attack against Na'Vi on bank. And yes, I thought so. In round 3, Tellers and Archives was one of them. Na'Vi were able to defend it the second time around in round 6. But DarkZero, if you remember, had an excellent attack onto this, whereby they just went in the last 30 seconds and they just killed everybody in about 4 seconds. They just like postured and positioned themselves really, really well, and then just hit them all at once. It was really effective.
Just didn't do much else right on that map, Tim. Was a 7-2 scoreline.
It was one of the 2 positives.
It was one of only 2, absolutely. Let's see how this kicks off, though. We've got Lender playing. I was about to say, maybe not quite the idea you're looking for there, I'd imagine. To chuck a C4 up into that spot. Up through the hatch might be more of the plan. This wall has been entirely electrified off, which should stop a push up from open area up towards the north. So what they are expecting is that DarkZero will push in through staff room, they'll push in through open area, and look to go for a plan up through the rotate. They've also got some control upstairs on the above, as you can see coming in here. Fantasy's playing on that. Doesn't want to contest downstairs just yet, I think, because his fear is that he might get pushed inside of Janitor. And he wouldn't be a mile wrong. There is Eclipse playing on the window. There was a man playing around square just a second ago, so he's being very passive in how he plays this.
Yeah, it's good so far from DarkZero. Patient again, as I'd sort of explained last time around, that they just got themselves positioned, waited. I'm not sure if that Selma went. Did it go too soon? No, I don't think it did. It survived. I was a little bit concerned it had landed at the wall before the EMP had detonated, which of course would have cost it its life. Now then, not really worrying too much about the top floor at the minute, DarkZero. They got away with it with Na'Vi. They basically took Dorky down inside a CEO, where Haz is playing now, and then from there on just pushed in. If you remember, it was the mirror, it was Blur on the mirror for Na'Vi that was playing in the same spot now in Janitors, but he was just left out in the cold, effectively. DarkZero looking to do similar, I think. They've got Miracle moved away and killed, and now they've got an opportunity to potentially push into sight. Eclipse is there on the doorway. He's ready to go. He's going to start getting this down. The cover is there for him as well, and Canadian just needs to hold that door, and this plant should go down.
And nothing they can really do about this outside of a big flank coming in from behind them. Flash is even raining through to make sure they got the cover. Pamba finding one into Fantasy, but by the looks of it, Furia living in a bit of a nightmare. There's not a clue as to what's going on. They see a man through the shells and they do find the kill, bringing it back down to a 3 versus 3 as nades start to rain through. This is that flank I was talking about, but it's shut down from on high. Pamba getting one back, a 3 versus 2, Tim. I don't really see how they fight this one back outside of an absolute miracle.
No way Furia should be winning this. Highs has headed straight upstairs. He knows that there's cover from above. He's going to look to try and find Pamba, but he's probably going to struggle. Lender will go down. That's him effectively out of the round. Highs is not going to have an opportunity to retrieve him, and he's just looking to move down the square. Skylight, there's nothing else for it. He's out of time. That is the job done, and that's going to be round 1 going to DarkZero regardless of what happens here. Highs doesn't find anybody. DarkZero, a great attack, and this is why I wanted to pick up on it. I'm glad I got there quick enough. It was a site that they played well on attack against Na'Vi, and it's a site that they've just played well on attack against Furia, and it makes me wonder, Furia, you've obviously watched the match, you've picked bank, you've brought them to somewhere that they struggled, but you've gone to the site that they showed us that they can attack. Like, I'm not sure about that.
It was a really passive defense as well. I touched on Fantasy being shot with the sat with the shotgun inside of Janitors. And he was being very passive. He didn't feel the need to push out just yet. You know, didn't worry about sticking his head out of Janitor and trying to get a kill, for example. Just said, look, I got a hatch to play behind here. I can step across on that when needed. But DarkZero just hit the site. And for a team that are playing so passive, Furia doing very little to stop them actually getting in sight and going for a plant, with the majority of both teams still left alive. DarkZero with some good pace in round 1 and now going to slow things down coming into round 2. And Tim, maybe there's something to be learnt here because they attacked this site earlier on. They didn't have the best success. They're getting behind the Monty of Canadian.
They're trying to do something differently. Like you say, they didn't have a lot of success. They struggled. I commented on it that Na'Vi were able to successfully defend this site twice over, you know, with a pretty standard hold of just keeping themselves down inside a site. They didn't try to do anything fancy. They didn't extend into open and staff. They just locked it down, and there was not much that DarkZero could do to muscle their way through it. So as you say, they are hoping to do something a little bit differently here. It's going to be probably, I would imagine, the old classic of push Monty into server and just try to bully his way in and just get the plant down inside a CCTV door.
Here we go. So really looking for where Canadian's going to start his march, and apparently it's up towards Tunnel. You've got a couple of members of DarkZero looking to push their way into Electric as well. So starting out with getting square cleared, stop any flanks coming down behind them, and then start to step their way forwards. Here already, you can see where the Monty's walking up to. I think he's got a smoke right in front of his face, mind you. So we'll have to eat a good chunk of that, losing already about 50 HP on the back away, Tim.
That was well played by Miracle there. He just baited him in up to a point where he knew that he was going to get an absolute lungful of it, and that is exactly what Canadian does. And it's in the place. He's pinged it out. He's been very careful edging forward there, so he knows where the canister is, and he's trying to bait him to detonate it now, but he's ready to dip away, and he takes a lot less damage from it.
It's so good because the fact that he's challenging on the angle means that no one can step up to shoot it out. They could maybe throw a nade in there, but do you really want to be doing that? I mean, Fantasy, again, just cannot find his way into this series. Shut down by Hyper with barely a knuckle moved. Far too easy for him. A second swing comes in. Pamba this time round. I tell you what, Tim, there's something in the water because DarkZero look on fire today.
Yeah, they're looking good, and it gets better and better and better. And I'm just hoping that they can continue this momentum beyond today. Canadian doing a little dance of death with Miracle. How does Canadian get away with that? Takes a ton of damage from the Toxic Babe, manages to do a little pirouette around the man, and then he loses his life on the bottom of server stairs. A nightmare for Furia here, as this is a much better bottom floor attack coming out of DarkZero, and it has all pushed in behind that Monty. NJR manages to get himself a kill, and that leaves Highs all alone up above. Whether DarkZero are going to take the time, they can do if they want, to try and go in and have some sort of impact on Highs, but they don't need to. They've dropped the smoke, they get the kill. It's flawless from DarkZero. Where were this DarkZero on bank earlier?
It's a lot better, isn't it? And I think really the confidence from Furia just doesn't overly look there. I like that they're being aggressive with the smoke. It was really cool play around the Monty, but around the map, they're just getting swung on. Like, again, Hyper barely lifting a finger to bring down Fantasy. Pamba with a great swing up towards Janitors. Furia, when they play passive, are being pushed inside of site and a plant's going down. When they're playing out on the roam to try and keep them busy, they're being swung on by two prolific fraggers on the side of DZ. And even when Hyper and Pamba are being quiet, you've got NJR putting up numbers. You've got Eclipse fragging out. What do you do when you're losing in every possible aspect of the game right now? It's looking shaky, and a 2-0 could be on the way if this keeps up, because Furia in these last 2 rounds have barely come close.
Barely come close is a good description, really. Like you say, they've just not been able to have any sort of massive impact within things here, and it has been a tough one for them so far. They're going to move on to Open and Staff, and they've got the Maestro and the Alder to try and chew through a few bodies as DarkZero go on the attack. They're going to be trying to hold themselves down inside of Kitchen to begin with, I would imagine. That's where Miracle is going to start out. He's got his Evil Eye cameras there as well, and he's just going to try to make that his domain. We do see the occasional rush into this site. I'm not sure it's something that DarkZero will bring to the table, though. I think they'll be a little bit steadier about it.
What we normally see is a smash coming through onto that east doorway, the one just inside of the staff room. It normally gets castled off, for example. A sledge will come through, swing at the hammer, and they are inside. That's the most likely rush that you might see. More commonly, what I think you get coming out of most teams is you'll get control of square, you'll open up the large quad wall or triple wall, and then try and step your way through once you've cleared out the player, in this case Miracle, who's sat just behind it. So that will probably again be the big focus they're going for. It's a quad wall. I'm a total liar. That's the one we're looking for, I imagine, here, but it does mean getting nades over the top, for example, and that's where something like a Wamai or a Jaeger would come in, of which there are none in this round, Tim. So my question towards Furia is, how are you keeping DarkZero at bay? Because I don't see the answer to that or any way of stopping these 6 nades from flying through.
Nope. As you say, it's going to be something that they can definitely do some damage with. Hyper is established on the square skylight now. He's looking to catch anybody out on the rotate through tellers. There's one having a little think about it. We can see the silhouette just on the edge of the ADS there. He's not going to push forward just yet, but Hyper, I think, is well aware that Rare is playing down there. First nade comes in, not going to do any damage, but the explosives will no doubt continue to fly. There's 5 more of them, and as you quite rightly pick out, there's no way of stopping them on the side of the defenders. 1 minute 45 left on the clock. No kills yet for DarkZero, but they've certainly got some good map control.
I was about to say, it's kind of a celebration moment for Fury that they've lasted half the round without losing a single man. Doesn't mean that DZ won't just burst through their defensive lines here as we get later into the round. Canadian on a little swing, no idea that a guy's tucked in just off to the left. Has the inkling that there is one in here, probably seen him on a drone, but doesn't want to go swinging in too wildly, so he's taking it nice and slow. His only real job there is to stop the man from below, like chucking a C4 up through the hatch, for example. So Lender knows that he's under pressure, has to back away.
The droning continues down on the bottom floor. Does he find Lender? Yes, they see him and now need to deal with him, or at least cut off his method of getting back into sight. Eclipse is going to open up that quad wall, or he's certainly going to try in a minute. He's just looking for the gaps in the mute jammers. I think that's what the little walk back and forward is, to try and wait until the symbol disappears, and that'll tell him exactly where he needs.
Here we go.
Canadian's here. He's going to dump them
in.
Bad timing from Fantasy. Nearly loses his life. Tries to push the door. Gets 1, gets 2. Big play from Fantasy after taking that damage from the nade. And the exothermic will not detonate. And all of a sudden, this looks like a Furia round.
So lucky there, I think, Fantasy. If that nade had been cooked for half a second longer, he'd be a dead man right now. Speaking of which, Hyper does get the shutdown. They've lost their 2. They've lost their hard breach. But these 2 will not be stopped. They're marching their way through. Finding a couple for themselves, making it another. How do you stop this kind of play, Tim? They've just marched through sight and slaughtered.
Team that can be absolutely lethal when they start doing that. The problem that they've got now is that DarkZero are only 4 rounds away from making it to the final 8 at the 6 Invitational 2022 days. When they started the group stages, that I imagine... Probably not, because all these teams are, you know, they have super belief in themselves. But you'd have to think that it was potentially a bit of a pipe dream at that stage. You know, if you'd have said, here's last 8, they'd have ripped your hands off at that point, because it was a tough start for them in the groups. But they've grown into this tournament. I've said this before, form is sometimes the most important thing. And the team who might not be on paper the best in the tournament can still come through and win it, because they have their best performances at the right time. And DarkZero seem to be building towards a crescendo here, because they're getting better and better.
That's exactly it. For Furia, their go-to game plan down in the basement is going to be what we saw coming out of, I believe it was Na'Vi that played this earlier on. Smoke and the Chanka together, and a C4 in the back pocket of Rare. They're really looking to play the denial-based game here. And it was played beautifully by Na'Vi earlier on today. If you recall, Tim, they identified DarkZero as being quite slow. When it got to that last 50 seconds or so, the Shumikers started piling in. When it got to the last 30 or so, Doki, who was playing FMG Smoke, started getting the smoke canisters out. They just played it so ridiculously well, and even in one round we saw a 2K coming out of secretly with a C4. DarkZero should identify this as, oh hey, we've already seen this once today, and here is where we struggled. What do we need to change?
Somebody was just racing up the blue stairs there. Thought they might just lose their life, but Miracle will hold short and just try to keep a hold of that. There you go, he's just up behind his shield up at the top. It was the speed he was moving with that just made me a little bit concerned there, but no. The angle had been held by DarkZero. They've got control of the map very quickly. They are happy that they can start opening hatches, I think. They've got themselves positioned on square skylight. They've got everything locked down.
Well, think about the one time this really fell apart for the side of Na'Vi on the style of defense earlier on was when they got a bit too aggressive out in the map. When Doki was roaming, when Blur was roaming, they didn't have C4s and smoke players on site, for example. Furia are doing not exactly the opposite, but they are all playing in proximity to the site. Arguably, Miracle is currently the most risky, playing on the blue stairs with a shotgun. But outside of him, everyone else is dug back in and waiting for the push to begin.
DarkZero going to need to deal with blue stairs, and that is exactly how they do it. They open the hatch. Miracle doesn't want any part of it. He's on the smoke. He knows that his gadget is going to be very useful here, and that is an unfortunate attempt at a trick there from Rare. It will be unsuccessful, so he needs to dip back as well. Everything's going DarkZero's way at the minute, Des. They're doing fantastically well. Hatches are open. Blue stairs are theirs. They've got access to server. They can start thinking about potentially getting a plant down.
Absolutely, it's looking better. They've still got to chew through all that utility that will come out of Furia, and this is the first Shumiker being fired out onto not quite the default spot, but pretty darn close. NGR with a nade trying to go deep. They're trying to blow at the player that sat at the back here, really looking in towards the artillery of the team. The smoke and the Chanka sat all the way at the back. But they can get it on through. That one falling a little bit short, and they catch out one of those two players. That will be the dream start for them.
40 seconds left to go here. Eclipse is just waiting for his moment. Pamba manages to find highs to open things up, but it's traded out immediately by Fantasy, and that leaves us in a 4v4. Time ticking down, and they're just trying to bait out more of that utility before Eclipse goes in for the plant. Is he going to try and stick it this time? No, he has to move away as the Toxic Babe canister starts doing its job. The Shumiker launcher just continues peppering this plant spot with that fire. Canadian, he's holding on to the door, and there's 14 seconds left here. They might have to go deep. There comes the smoke, and that's going to be Eclipse pushing into the bomb chassis. Hyper manages to get one. 3 versus 3. Eclipse just keeps going. He's going to be down though. It's a big quad for Fantasy in the round, and that's going to be the first defense for Furia, and the volume is up already.
It's amazing that they can win, you know, one round there, being down 3-1 and still come out full of beans when they come away the victor. All of that coming down to Fantasy as well. A massive play when the smoke was going down, when there were C4s being tossed everywhere, when no doubt the comms were absolute chaos. He's got the composure to close out a big 4K and hand them their first round.
We're going to be heading into round number 5 then. DarkZero facing their first adversity on Bank. It's been all their way so far in the first 3 rounds, but then in number 4, Furia managed to get a first successful defense. I don't think it's going to knock DarkZero too much. They're going to expect to lose rounds here. They don't plan on going into the half 6-0, I'm sure, but if they could get a 4-2 or, dare I say, even a 5-1, it's going to be what will feel like a massive steal for them. Now, Furia are going to go up to the top floor. This is not a site that we saw DarkZero attack earlier on because Na'Vi didn't use it, so it's going to be something a little bit different for them.
I like what we're seeing though. The Ying was banned away on the last map, and I really thought here we might see it employed a little bit more. Canadian though, rather than going over towards playing that, is bringing along something that DZ have played a few times on maps like Chalet. It's going to be that Capitao. Similar sort of idea, only you force defenders to move where you can stand still and kind of eat up a full white screen. It's okay. You can toss a C4 whilst you flash, whatever. You can't do much about fire. You must move. Likelihood is they play on the windows here. Canadian smokes out the rotates, for example. One in towards Janitor, one towards the single hallway. They have one player hold the angle, and you then bolt in and get yourself the plant down. The fire is also going to help make sure defenders can't push through certain bits of ground, so Really good from DarkZero, but obviously we need to see it actually be used correctly. It's all good having these ideas and the intent. If you can't pull it off because you're getting spawn peaked, because you're getting caught up in early engagements, or because you're wasting time, things can work against you very quickly.
They absolutely can. I absolutely can. We're going to move into the droning phase as NGR is just looking inside of the first 30 seconds just to scope out this defence, see where everybody is positioned. Is there any cheap picks? Is there any utility that's key that needs to be cleared out? And then he's going to get onto the windows to try and do something about it. Rare, he's holding himself inside of the office for the time being. There's 3 of Furia on site here, so they're not too active in and around the top floor. They've got 1 in stock, I think, and then 1 inside of the corridor, but they're just holding the positions, waiting for DarkZero to feed into their angles for the time being.
Absolutely. Canadian's the one pushing up through lobby, so maybe it's an assault here coming in towards Banana, which is where Rare is sat. I know that he's there, but I guess the one thing you've got to worry about is, well, he can just move away. He can just run. I thought for a second we might see magnets coming out, but there's obviously no Wamai on side. NJR opening up on to Rare, a C4 taken off the board, and Rare's having a right stinker, Tim. 0 and 5 so far.
I think he should have just run Des. He was saying it was a possibility for him, but he doesn't.
I mean, yeah, that was the go-to. Just run. Forehead.
Fantasy manages to find NJR. That's a trade, taking him down off the rappel. They've still got Pamba up on the windows there, but that is a nice long angle there that Fantasy's managed to get that kill on. Not much presence inside of the map for DarkZero at the minute. That's my concern for this attack. 1 minute 10 left to go, and they still haven't really got boots on the ground. They've not managed to disrupt the defence enough to make it safe to move inside. So they need to be pretty careful here that they don't find themselves running out of time. They're getting a little bit tentative, and I just feel that maybe they've run out of ideas, and Lender's going to have an idea or two here if they're not careful. He's going to punish them. He moves underneath into Tellers. Explosion, but Hyper was ready. 4v3. Is he ready for the second? Yes. Great play from Hyper. Big double eclipse on the party. Closes it out with a double himself. And DarkZero, as I commented on earlier, same sort of attack out of absolutely nowhere. Mop up inside of about 5 seconds.
It's just so easy for them at that point, right? Like, I feel bad for Furia because, again, it's not the wrong intent they've got, but when Hyper can swing you towards Janitor Corridor and just kill 2 without barely batting an eyelid, what are you to fight back? There is no easy answer, even with the entry, or the counter-entry, I guess, the trade being returned back by Fantasy. He's the only one currently in the server and delivering the goods right now. He's sat on 8 kills, but the rest of the team, there's 3 kills, Tim, between all the other 4 members across 5 rounds. You can't rely on one guy to do all the hard yards for you. Across DZ, it's far more balanced. It is just looking messy. Nothing to go on for Furia so far. We need to see a turnaround now. They've already taken their tactical timeout. They've got 3 more chances. If DarkZero win 3 more rounds, this is done, and Furia are out without barely giving a fight. That's what's kind of sad to say, is they were ridiculously close against TSM, you know, really close maps. They lost 2-0, but it came down to being really good series that we saw between them both in the group stage and also in the bracket. Against DarkZero, they just haven't turned up to play.
Not at all, and it's sad to see, Des, in honesty.
Very.
You know, we never want to see a team, I said it earlier, we never want to see a team limp out of the tournament. You know, we want every single one of them. There can only be one winner, ultimately. You know, 19 teams are going to go home, but we want to see them all go out swinging, you know, really fighting for their spot. And internally, Furia, you better believe, are fighting for this tooth and nail. It's just not happening for them, and it's a shame to see that that's sort of what it comes down to at the minute. I'm going to quote you back at you, Des, because I know you trust yourself more than anybody else. I know you'll believe me when I say it. It's a game of 2 halves. We've got to get Furia onto the other half and see exactly how it looks when DZ are trying to defend. That's where they struggled on bank earlier. Canadian, however, he gets an opener onto Rare, and that tough game just continues for him.
It was a battle of the 2 zeros in a way, both on 0 kills in the map, but it's Canadian who comes out on top. Hyper into a second. I've already spoke about him so much, but he's 8-1 at this point, Tim. How do you stop him? He's playing on the flex roll. He's playing a Thatcher, for God's sake, and he's slapping them silly. It's ridiculous.
At least able to still utilise the Yokai drones. Highs is still alive, so able to relocate, ping out, get some information. Furia needs something to go on here. They need a starter to get them on their way, but in a 5 versus 3, DarkZero have got 2 minutes, and they're just going to hit the drones. They've got 8 of them left, Des. They've got all the information in the world. They're going to find these players, and they're going to make life a misery for them. Lender, however, he's able to laugh as he takes down Pambazoo, gets himself a headshot, and that brings it just a little bit closer for Furia. Back in touch, 3 versus 4.
I was going to say, surely wants to get himself juiced up here. He's looking a little bit low. I mean, I think he's found his way through 1 as he's back up to about half HP. Was a little bit lower than that. There is still one more that he can run through and collect, I believe, up towards the other side. Sat on the on the quad roll that's been reinforced off, but not before first and foremost he finds a C4 kill, 2 in the round. And Lender refusing to roll over and die in this round, refusing to let Furia go out without a whimper, has brought things back to a 3 versus 3.
DarkZero desperately need to close this round out. They were 5 versus 3. They don't want to go into the second half defending when they've just come back out of a 3v5 loss, if that's how this one goes. So DarkZero need to knuckle down and need to find a way here. They're attacking into open and staff. They managed to get one. It's Eclipse again. He's having a big game so far. He's going to be able to start getting that diffuser down as well. Spray down. Highs manages to do some damage. NJR finds Lender. It's surely in the hands of DarkZero now, as that plant will be successful. Eclipse has done so much work for this team against Furia, and he just continues giving. It's going to be NJR that finishes things off, and DarkZero does the 5-1 at the half. They're absolutely cruising here.
Like I say, Furia, it doesn't feel have turned up to play. DarkZero 2 rounds away from moving on forwards. And we commented on it after the last game, Tim. We will have a new world champion, and you said, will we see DarkZero after that first map carry on all the way into the top 4, start threatening for a top spot? Admittedly, against a team that aren't really performing, it's hard to say, but they do look good. They have warmed up the longer this competition has gone on. Again, a really shaky first couple of group stage games where even when they were winning, many people were asking, what the hell is up with DarkZero? But the longer the tournament goes on, the better they seem to play. They're going to rip a strat out of Navi's strat book here and bring along that Chanka and Smoke. Both teams employing the same strategy down in the basement. And on Furia's side, we've got a Zero coming along, something that DarkZero were playing for the longest time in the NAL. Bit of a change of roles here, teams all borrowing away from each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you say about DarkZero. As you were saying it, I think about it, and coming into this morning, do we think that anybody was probably really sort of scared of DarkZero? Probably not. Coming out of today,
are you?
I think they probably will be. And what a great turnaround for them. Like, you know, coming into the day, they felt like one of the teams that was sort of middle of the pack. They'd had bad performances, they'd had good performances, but, you know, they were beatable. And right now, they are just looking like a completely different beast. They're looking absolutely fantastic. They're coming into this first defense. They're not going to be trying to hold on to open and staff, I don't think. They don't have the castle and they don't have the mirror, but they do have Canadian Eclipse playing up there, which I'm a little bit worried about. They're trying to do it. It didn't work earlier, Des, and they're trying to do it with less utility. With the hatch open, it just feels like an invite to Furia.
You know what I always say about this, Tim? If you're wasting time on the roam and getting back to site, you're drawing any kind of utility, and they've tracked nades out of the other side before to clear out mute jammers and things like that, of which, like you say, there are none in this round, so it's less utility, but they'll back away. They don't seem too phased about leaving this hatch open to give them a rotate back down to site. Eclipse, once again, is just sat on here hoping to pick up a drone or two. They've already removed 3 in the round, so it's not a bad start, but the more time he can sit up here, the more he can collect and then back away, the better.
I'm worried about the mental game for DZ. If Furia manage to get themselves a couple of opening attacks here, you start thinking straight back to that Navi game and you start thinking we're going to struggle on the defensive bank again. So DarkZero need to close this one out as quickly as possible. I know they've got a 5-1 lead and it can feel like that's, you know, an awful lot, but they've got work ahead of them to do. They're going to drop back to site. 1 minute in, and Furia have got control and they've got a hatch open for them. They
haven't got the control yet. He shot out a drone. They've committed 3 drones into trying to get open area control. He's killed off a couple and then drops himself away. Now that they've got it, they can get in and start getting things opened up. So there's no crazy janitor hole coming in. It's a pretty safe and secure way of getting back to site. Rare's going to step in towards the office now and get this hatch opened up. This is where Furia can start looking towards their attack. But again, you're looking in towards the denial game coming out of DZ. You've got 2 C4s. You've got the Pulse. You've got Smoke Cannon canisters, you've got Shumikers. They've got so much still to play behind, and they still have control of the blue stairs.
They do still have the blue stairs. Work needs to be done by Furia quickly because there's a minute left to go.
They're going to pinch him, he'll die.
I think they thought opening the hatch would be sufficient to move him, but it hasn't been. Pamba's committed to playing his life here. Hyper finds Fantasy. There's the pinch, but Pamba has a reaction. Surely not two. He's got two! He's absolutely ripping. Oh! He tries to keep going, but Rare shuts him down. But what a cost! What a cost for Furia! They are now frantically trying to get that plant spot open. Miracle's working the hatch, but it's a 2v4, and DarkZero, they can sit back and play their angles. They've got Troy just feeding the information back in from the pulse there. Miracle takes a drop. They should know about this, and the challenge will likely come in. Rare, he's trying to get that diffuser down. Miracle's doing critical work to try and hold it off, but no, it's all falling to pieces, and surely it's the end for Furia. Rare manages to get one, but he's going to need three more. Tachanka just making things difficult, launching Shumika cartridges into sight. Eclipse finds the final one, and that's going to be DarkZero on series point now.
They are rolling through them, Tim. And that blue stairs hold turned out to be everything they needed. Good presence as well from Pamba, taking the shot at the bottom, down in the one man. Not getting greedy and looking to finish it off, turns straight round to the top of stairs and finds the second onto the incoming Maverick. Really, really smart play, and I'm loving what I'm seeing from DarkZero. They've kind of adapted this strat to say, let's focus less on holding down open and staff. We'll still sit there, we'll still kill a couple of drones as they come in and then drop into sight, but our focus is going to be on blue. It's going to be on site-based denial, leaning into playing on that smoke and the Chanka. Really good adaptation, melding together two strategies that they've, one, used themselves, and two, seen others do. Their last potential sight of this series could be against Furia, could be here in staff and open. And Furia now leaning into the Capitale by themselves. It's going to be Rare bringing that one along in the round.
I'll concede half a point there, Des.
For what?
That there was a light attempt at open staff hold that was dropped back to site, and they did have the hatch open. But what I will point out while saying it is, there was a lot less utility expended up there.
There were,
There was no castle, there was no mirror. They had more of the tools on site that they needed to be able to do what they did.
I like it,
So
it's optimal.
Adaptable, maybe a little bit of a middle ground that I can get on board with.
Is this where we're kind of shaking hands in the middle and saying, yeah, now it's good?
Saying it doesn't work when there's too much utility because you'll lose too much when you drop away from it. But if you just want to extend a little bit to waste a minute and a half, not necessarily the end of the world.
It's like I say, it's the melding together of strategies there that I think is really cool, and seeing that adaptability, the evolution, the growth, you know, change is good. And it's good to see it coming in and working wonders for them. 6-1 they sit at. As said, one round stands between them and the end of this series and a spot progressing through into tomorrow's games. They come up against the winner of FaZe against Elevate, who are currently playing on the other stream. And in case you missed the games prior to this one, it's Oxygen versus MIBR as the other lower round game. It's looking nice and spicy for our closing teams in this tournament.
It really is. I mean, a final 8 is going to be Team Liquid, TSM, Team Empire, Sonics, Oxygen, MIBR, and then the winner of this versus the winner of FaZe and Elevate. And that is a fantastic final 8, but a few surprises in there as well, I'd have to say.
We're just looking at
Pleasant
Empire.
surprises.
Empire just waving the flag like...
Come on, Empire!
It's definitely not as LATAM stacked as prior tournaments have been. And as much, you know, as LATAM fans love to see LATAM on top, and I think SI last year, the top 6 teams were all LATAM teams. It was ridiculous. Seeing a balanced like circuit where all various regions are competitive is the dream state to be in. Lender, great nade coming onto Eclipse to get things off and breathe a little bit of life into this Furia side, but I wouldn't get too excited just yet.
Not very nice start for them, but yeah, to touch on your point there, Des, I totally agree with you. I think it's better when we have a mixture of regions. It's well known, I'm an absolute lover of LATAM, but you know, you don't want to see them just coming in and being the top 4, top 6, top 8 teams at every tournament. Every time through the year. We want that mix-up, and I came into this one saying I wanted to see, I was backing that NA resurgence, and they really are delivering for me at this tournament. We're going to have a number of their great teams. It's looking like 3 probably going through into that top 8, so nearly half of the teams coming from NA, and after the last year they've had, there's not many people would have predicted that.
No, especially not Sonics, who've been really delivering so far.
Here we go.
But, oh my god, it's the slaughter water once again. 2 kills coming in. Like I said, you can find the entry. You can think you've got an advantage, and then DZ just rip it away. Rare getting one back onto NJR and shutting him out. High's a second. Is this the time when Furia fight back? Apparently the answer is yes. Hyper has got it all to do. He's got the Roni in hand, but he's going to find the angle. Highs gets the shutdown. 3 left alive for the side of Furia at the end, and they prolong what feels like the inevitable for at least one more round.
Furia just always able to find something, always able to dig deep. Never done until that scoreboard reads 7. That is the fact for them, and they are proving it once again. They managed to get themselves 1, but they've a lot more to find. There are no more mistakes for Furia inside a bank. There are no more mistakes for Furia inside of the 6 Invitational right now, Des. They are fighting for their very lives in this tournament. One more round for DarkZero is all it's going to take, and they're going to be heading this time, DarkZero, to Tellers and Archives, but you just feel like they're just waiting for that basement defense to open back up again.
That's the thing, right? You've got to rotate through every single site here, which doesn't really fill you with inspiration. We tried Open, now we tried Tellers and Archives. Of course, always got CEO if they want to try it, but I get the feeling we aren't likely to see that coming through in this game. Hyper on the Oryx, we spoke about this combo you see a few times. You've got NGR on the Thunderbird to juice him back up so he can just charge around freely and live the fantasy that everyone has when playing on Oryx. You can just run through walls for fun without potentially losing yourself a bullet's worth of HP and really impeding yourself coming into a firefight. There he goes again, look at it. He's having a field day, mate, I'm telling you.
Absolutely charging round.
That's it, that's it. All these rotations being opened up.
We've got the corner stations being placed down. Interesting one there. It suggests that there's going to be a specific open and staff hold. Last time round when Furia defended this site, we saw them just reinforce the wall off and just electrify it all and have nothing to do with open and staff. But DarkZero obviously wanting to play inside of there, because otherwise the corner station is just free HP for the attackers.
Yeah, Furia also played inside of Janitor. They had a man, I think it was Fantasy, sat up there with the shotgun, and the hatch was open. But DZ have reinforced it off. So again, very big stylistic differences coming in. In terms of the effectiveness, time will still tell. They're starting out towards Square, at least on the side of Fantasy and Highs. Lender's up on the window on the north side here to make sure they've got that top floor control. Probably want to get above there and make good use of the sledge that Highs is playing. Start raining some nades down below, clear out some utility. Start piling the pressure onto the defenders, because you've also got that Capitao Tim who can smoke things off, burn the defenders away, and keep them guessing as to exactly when their death will be coming.
Pamba just playing an important role there, but he's pushed out inside of 50 seconds with the aggression coming through from Furia, and it was something we saw from them on course line, and it looks like something they're going to try to bring again.
Oh,
Fantasy's not one to try and back away from a fight. They spot the Oryx downstairs, and Hyper might just want to think about relocating himself after that, because he's going to be pushed pretty quickly if they get the opportunity here. But I think the cover's in place that's just going to prevent that happening at the minute. Furia sort of wanting to be aggressive, wanting to push forward, but they just keep coming up against obstacles.
I love that prox alarm, by the way, that was on the back of the fire sign, just outside the double doorway that leads in towards staff room. We'll give them a lot of information if it ever comes down to it that someone is about to press through the doorway. They did clock it and shoot it out, so not going to be effective in this round, but one to take into your rank games maybe. Let's see though, as this floor now starts getting opened up by Highs. We commented earlier on that he's looking to get in this position to force the defenders to get squirming, moving away from those key locations that they still want to sit in. And for the side of DZ, you can see them rotating freely into open here. They've got one out towards main stairs. They don't look nervous, Tim, or boxed in. They're very happy to challenge them directly here as this floor is getting opened up further by Highs.
Nitro detonated, but will not find its mark. 59 seconds left to go. Big first kill for Canadian onto Fantasy. That could be the beginning of the end for Furia here. They've still got time, they've still got men, but that just keeps slipping away. NJR, big kill onto Highs. 3 versus 5 now. And you've got to say DarkZero are going to kick themselves if they let this one slip away. Miracle tries to make the challenge onto main stairs, does find a lot of damage, but Pamba ultimately able to find a kill onto Rare. 5 versus 2 now. DarkZero surely heading into the final 8. Lender finds an absolute freebie onto the crouched Pambazoo there. 25 seconds left to go. It's all up to Miracle and Lender, and it feels right now like Furia are going to need a miracle, Des. They're going to need something special here. 2 versus 3. Here they go. Managed to find one, but time is running out. Diffuser's down cold. Hyper gets himself one. 3 versus 1, and surely this is it for DarkZero. Surely this is another North American team heading into the final 8 after another great performance. Miracle, he He has to stick this. Goes through, does Panba, and he finds the final kill. And look what it means to DarkZero. And that has been a great performance, a great Tuesday from them here at 6 Invitational 2022.
Some words a bit back and forth there by the looks of it from Troy, but for the rest of the team, yep, muted joy for sure. Again, they made themselves through.